Formula One has been on the summer break, and I've been struggling to find a compelling reason to keep going. But now we're back! This weekend we're going to Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix, which will be the first Dutch Grand Prix since its return to the calendar where Max Verstappen isn't the overwhelming favorite to win by 20 plus seconds. Instead, we'll be debating which McLaren is going to win by 20 plus seconds. We can't even pray for rain to save us because then the FIA is going to have a 2-hour rain delay while the track is completely fit for purpose. Speaking of rain disasters, let's talk about Belgium. Over the years, we've seen the historic Spa-Francorchamps circus deteriorate from one of the most decorated and hyped races of the season into a circuit like Suzuka, where overtaking is basically impossible if you don't have a massive tire advantage. The one saving grace this track had was the potential of rain. We all got excited for the prospect of a forecasted wet weather race in Spa, but there was some fear that due to the severity of the rain, we could be looking at either 98 Spa or 21 Spa. The sprint was mostly dry, and we saw a vintage Max Verstappen win after pulling off a gutsy overtake out of the exit of Eau Rouge into the Kemmel Straight on Piastri's McLaren. The main race was a little bit different, however. This time it was Lando Norris on pole, but come race day, it was absolutely pissing down. The race was delayed by an hour and a half despite the track being fine at least for an hour before the race was underway. We then had a rolling start and dicked around behind the safety car for 4 laps before the race was finally underway. Lando Norris didn't get the memo, killing his battery before the restart and immediately handing Oscar Piastri the lead after having no battery coming out of Eau Rouge. I just don't understand this guy, man. Every single time it looks like he's about to take a step forward and carry some momentum, he blows his foot off with a shotgun with some bullshit like this. The rest of the race was relatively unintriguing, although Lewis Hamilton had a phenomenal stint in the wet conditions to vault himself from 18th into 7th place. Red Bull screwed over Yuki Tsunoda after his first good qualifying session in an age, and we had a brief moment of tension where Oscar Piastri was trying to take his mediums over 30 laps, but because he was chased by Lando Norris, he had absolutely nothing to worry about and took his 6th win of the season. We had some minor edging further back as Charles Leclerc was holding on for dear life against Verstappen to get his 5th podium of the year. Overall, however, there were a couple main takeaways from this race. 1, it became clear that the sport was moving away from Spa. 2, the McLaren's tire wear was otherworldly. And 3, the FIA has no idea how to run a wet weather race, although we kinda knew this already. The following week in Budapest, I had the unbelievable pleasure of experiencing the euphoria of a Charles Leclerc pole, as well as the all too familiar pain of watching Ferrari yet again undeliver in a season of unimaginable disappointment. As Lando yet again bottled his race start, Charles and Oscar duked it out for the top spot, and for the first 40 or so laps, it genuinely looked like Ferrari and Charles had the pace to hold off the McLaren. Charles was able to hold off Piastri, he wasn't making any mistakes, and Lando Norris, this idiot, was trying to one-stopper. Ferrari is back! Charles can still make a push for the championship. The pace is there. We can do this! On lap 40, he picked up an issue with the chassis and started dropping tenths every lap. He ended up getting passed by Piastri and then took out his rage on Osama bin Russell while he was trying to overtake him for P3. He ended up getting a 5-second penalty and finished 43 seconds off the lead. Meanwhile, for McLaren, this race went down to the wire, as the biggest moment came down to the end when Piastri spent the last 10 laps getting cucked by Lando Norris and being given a clinic in defensive driving. I've seen so much talk on social media about McLaren favoring Lando over Oscar and backing one driver over the other, and I'm sorry, that's the biggest load of horse I've ever heard. Oscar had 5 laps to overtake Lando on tires that were 10 laps newer and just couldn't get by him. It's as simple as that. The 2-stop strategy is typically how the Hungaroring goes, and Norris was able to make a gutsy 1-stopper work by pulling off a great first stint and making the tires last in the second stint, just like what Oscar did the week before. Oscar lost this race just as much as Lando won it. McLaren just doesn't have the balls to favor one driver over the other, especially at this point in the season. This race definitely did shake my confidence in Piastri slightly. Credit to Norris for pulling off a gutsy strategy, but this is now the second time this season that Oscar has failed to complete a successful hunt on Norris. Obviously, chasing is much harder in this era of Formula One, but in Austria and now in Budapest, Oscar had clear chances to attack and overtake Norris for the lead, but failed, in addition to almost taking both of themselves out of the race. Obviously, I'm not calling Oscar a bottle job, but I definitely believe it's fair to question how far apart him and Lando truly are. Looking back at this season so far, I think it's fair to say that this season has been insanely disappointing compared to the expectations. I do genuinely wonder how the season would have looked if Ferrari didn't completely rework their car going into the season. Last season, they won 5 races and were a Sainz-Perez crash away in Baku from their first constructors title in 16 years. This season has been one of Leclerc's strongest seasons, and it's a shame that he likely won't have another chance to bring home a win unless Ferrari clutch up in Monza. The Lewis-Hamilton experience has been a disaster, with the former 7.5 times world champion all but giving up on the season by Miami and calling himself washed at every possible chance. Someone please tell me why we got rid of Sainz. We were 14 freaking points away. Mercedes have been stinky poo-poo this entire regulation cycle and have once again introduced an upgrade that has somehow made the car less competitive than initially thought, spoiling George Russell's chances at a dark horse title charge. And Red Bull imploded when they realized McLaren's pace wasn't entirely dependent on a fucking front wing. The midfield battles have honestly been the more entertaining bits of the season, as Williams have been clinging on to P5 for dear life after a fast start to the season. They managed to squeeze some points in Spa, and the next couple of races are going to be key in determining the top of the midfield. Right now, they sit about 20 points above Aston, SuMmEr, and VCarb. This next stretch of races in Zandvoort, Monza, and Baku have been some of the stronger circuits for Williams in the past, notably seeing Franco Colapinto's points finishes last season. If Sainz and Albon can get a result for the team in these races, I think Williams will be able to hold off the rest of the midfield. If they drop points, however, this midfield fight gets extremely spicy. Aston bounced back from a stinky weekend in Spa and collected 16 points to jump SuMmEr for P6. SuMmEr themselves have been seeing results with a stunning P6 finish from Bortoleto in Budapest, as well as 3 points finishes in the last 4 entries. Shout out Gabby, man. He's been amazing this season and nobody's talking about how quick he's been. SuMmEr trails Aston by a single point as we head to Zandvoort with all to play for. In terms of driver transfers, we've had a relatively quiet summer. It's the worst kept secret in the world that Cadillac won Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez as their drivers for 26, which will bring valuable experience for a new team trying to get up on their feet, as well as a chance for redemption for both Bottas and Checo, who had seen their Formula 1 careers come to an unceremonious end in 2024. As for the rest of the grid, it seems that mostly everyone will stay where they are for 2026. With Laurent Mekies at the helm for Red Bull, I'm inclined to believe that Tsunoda will get another chance next to Verstappen, and VCarb will keep Hadjar and Liam Lawson, the latter which has put together a really quality rebound in the more drivable VCarb seat, and notably scoring a P6 finish in Austria. I still don't really understand why it wasn't Tsunoda in the Red Bull to begin with, but here we are. At this point, I would bet my entire life savings that Mercedes are maintaining their current lineup despite Max and Toto's deeply homosexual relationship. I'm not really sure what George Russell has to do to secure his seat, but he's been a top 3 driver this season and absolutely deserves to keep his seat over being exiled to Alpine. Speaking of the French dumpster fire, I literally have no idea who's up next in that second seat. Alpine is low-key like the midfield Red Bull, and that they have a really quality driver dragging the team and the car to points finishes and places it should not be, basically scoring every single point for the team while the second seat is being left to drown and being swapped mid-season. Watching Colapinto this season has been so depressing, man. He literally has no pace and just looks so uncomfortable in the car. I have no clue who they bring in next or what they do from here. I guess that's what happens when you hire a guy who is literally banned for life from the sport. Again, how is he back in the paddock? How?
Lotus, Lotus, Lotus 72, D. Lotus, Lotus, Lotus 72, D. É máquina do tempo e na velocidade não tem igual.